Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM, Clutch with Keon Rose, here on Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com. Our phone number is 423-800-8949, 423-800-8949. And it's a rainy post-Independence Day. I had a hard time getting here. There's flooding around my house. So if you are a person who lives, out in the Collegedale area, I can definitely testify to that. There's a little bit of flooding going on. Be careful as you're on the roads. Be careful as you travel in all of your various directions that you're choosing to go into. I have seen some rainy days here in Chattanooga. This one is one of the craziest ones for sure. So just be safe as you're out there on the road. Don't take any unnecessary risks. I like talking to you guys. I feel like I say this every week, but also it horrifyingly rains every week. So that's not really my fault. It's not really my fault. Let's just jump right into it, right? So the SEC Media Days 2017, the player attendee list has been announced. All the teams bring 3 players, and the media is able to interact with those players, talk to those players. And I'm sure that you're just dying to know who it is that Butch Jones thought to bring to SEC Media Days. And honestly, there are some things that you can learn from some SEC coaches about who it is that they chose to bring to the Media Days, right? For instance, here's something that you can learn about Nick Saban that you probably already knew about Nick Saban, which is this. Nick Saban decided to bring Bradley Bozeman, offensive lineman, Minkah Fitzpatrick, defensive back, and Calvin Ridley, wide receiver. And what all these people have in common is that they're upperclassmen. Nick Saban is there with the upperclassmen. Sure, you might ask yourself after the alarmingly good season that Jalen Hurts had as a freshman quarterback last year, wow, shouldn't we be bringing along Jalen Hurts? Yeah, no. Nick Saban says, bump your noise. I'm bringing the upperclassmen because that's what I do. I bring upperclassmen, right? So he's bringing them. Butch Jones, similarly, has decided to go with upperclassmen. Emmanuel Mosley, defensive back. Jashawn Robertson, offensive line. And Kendall Vickers, defensive line. And what that tells you about Nick Saban and also about Butch Jones is that they're traditionalists, right? But maybe for different reasons. Nick Saban has a track record of success where doing things the way that he has always done them overwhelmingly has worked for him. So Nick Saban does not see the need to particularly go out there and try and rock the boat. Why am I going to bring an underclassman to this event? This has always worked for me. I've always brought upperclassmen. If he continues to earn the starting job, right? Say the young man out of Hawaii, Tua Tagovailoa. And always butcher his name, but say he doesn't come in as the upstart signal caller and steal Jalen Hurts' job, then presumably Jalen Hurts would be the guy that would be able to hang on to this and be able to show up to SEC Media Days at some point in the future. He just would not be the guy doing it this time. Right? That's pretty much all it is. Jalen Hurts would not be the guy doing it this time, but next time down the road, if you continue to defend your job and have your job, like Nick Saban is like, yeah, you'll get there eventually. You'll get there eventually. But if you try and take this as a sign that, well, Tua might come in and start with that job, yeah, no, Nick Saban just does the upperclassman thing. Butch Jones is a traditionalist also, but he's a traditionalist for a different reason entirely. Butch Jones is the guy that does not like to rock the boat, right? He does not have the very long track record of success. He does have some success, but it's not safe. Nothing Butch Jones can do or has done is guaranteed. And so Butch Jones makes safe picks, right? We've seen this. Butch Jones does what he considers to be the safest option in every situation in a head-scratching way. He will choose the safe option when choosing who to start as a player. Butch Jones will choose the safe option in a game, right? Even when the safe option is actually not the safe option, right? He's got his offensive play chart. If the play chart says this is a safe option. Butch takes it. There is no sense of adventure in Butch Jones, from the way that he chooses his words to the way that he's got his haircut going on. Butch Jones is safe, right? Like, that's what makes him incredibly difficult to fire, is that Butch Jones is in a position right now where we don't know if he's good or not. And I'm listening to a lot of national guys, because I listen to a lot of college football podcasts, especially during the offseason, because I'm addicted and I need something to do to release all of my nerves. So you've got the Athlon podcast that comes out. The Athlon's podcast is really good, and they very often talk about Butch Jones and is he going to be one of those hot seat SEC coaches? We're not actually sure how good Butch Jones is what it feels like, right? Like, is he an average coach? Is he above average or below average? But Butch Jones does a very good job of making the safe pick most of the time, and he's got a talented enough squad that he's going to come out over even more often than not. So Butch Jones, by making the safe pick all the time, never looks bad, really. And so, like his SEC Media Day picks, instead of going for flash, he decided to go for upperclassmen, and that's a fine choice, but it also tells you a lot about him, in the same way that you're able to learn a lot about Kirby Smart at Georgia by who it is that he's decided to bring along, right? Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, running back, if you weren't aware already, and Raquan Smith, linebacker. That the biggest name upperclassmen on his team are also the running backs, and that Kirby Smart would like to have an offensive discussion. Kirby Smart wants us to be aware about the fact that his team's going to play offense this year. Not that they didn't play offense last year, but it was up and down. It was streaky at times. And I think a lot of that has to do with the development of Jacob Eason. And again, when you've got younger players, I don't think that you want those guys to be peppered by the media necessarily, especially a quarterback. That's something that you're going to get used to in time. I don't think you necessarily want that guy under the media scrutiny out there to have to answer questions that maybe they're not qualified to answer. It still would have been nice to see Jacob Eason on the list, the same way that I see South Carolina. They've got Jake Bentley as a sophomore showing up. Will Muschamp does whatever he wants, right? Like, that, to me, is whatever he feels is the right decision, which is what got him run out of Florida, which is what I think is going to have him being ultimately beloved in South Carolina, is that Will Muschamp does whatever he feels is necessary. And bringing Jake Bentley along, he seems to be the outlier, right? Like, if you have an underclassman quarterback, bringing them to SEC Media Days does not seem to necessarily be the decision. And yet, Jake Bentley's going for South Carolina, along with Hayden Hurst, tight end, and Deebo Samuel, wide receiver. And so this is all offense here for Muschamp, which is crazy because Muschamp is also a defensive guy. But a lot of these defensive guys want to have offensive conversations. And I wonder if there's not a little bit of misdirection there going on, where you don't necessarily want to have defensive conversations because that way you give less to your opponents. And also that you do want to make the statement that you are here to put points on the board, if that's not something you were known for. And South Carolina had moments last year where they were able to put points on the board. But again, I find that a lot of these teams with the younger quarterbacks, South Carolina, Georgia, your even Alabama, your offense had points where it was very unpredictable and not at all reliable, to the point where even though you have the talent on the roster and you can see the talent in flashes, you can't necessarily rely on it. And make no mistake about it, Alabama's defense is 90% of the reason they found themselves in the national title game last year. Their defense is the only defense in the country that scored points at the rate that it was scoring points. Like, historically scoring points at the rate that it was scoring points. So you've got all that. And then the SEC Media Days starting next Monday. Monday, we're going to have Brett Bielema, Ed Orgeron, and Butch Jones are going to be the first three coaches to go to start the week. Then Tuesday is Jim McElwain, Kirby Smart, Dan Mullen, Derek Mason. Wednesday is going to give us Nick Saban, Mark Stoops, Barry Odom, Kevin Sumlin. And then Thursday, we wrap everything up with Gus Malzahn, Hugh Freeze, and Will Muschamp. So the schedule is considered tentative at this point. It's not a guarantee that things work out this way. So obviously, for me, the most interesting day of this week is going to be Monday, right? Because how could it not be Monday? You've got Butch Jones, so we're in Tennessee country. We're gonna be covering Butch Jones. But then Ed Orgeron, we're going to be able to not understand Ed Orgeron in a press conference, which is going to be glorious and exciting. And then Brett Bielema is always fun for SEC Media Days, right? Arkansas fans wish that Brett Bielema were a joy during the regular season while coaching his football team. But on SEC Media Days, that to me is the best moment for Brett Bielema. Brett Bielema is, at this particular juncture, my favorite coach in the SEC, in large part because of the things that he is willing to say to the media. Tuesday, to me, is the second most interesting day. McElwain and Kirby Smart. I'm really interested, especially in Kirby Smart and what he has to say about what he plans to do at Georgia this upcoming season. Because to me, this is the season that we start to consider like this, whether or not this might not work. This isn't the season where anything actually happens, but it's definitely the season where fans decide this may or may not work, right? Like we talk about the second and third weeks in the college football season as being separation Saturday. And then when you look at someone's coaching career, like their second and third years, that's the separation years. Like either you are better than the last guy that we had and we like you better than the last guy, or we don't. And Kirby Smart's moving into that territory, second and third year, hugely important because this is where people decide whether or not they like you, right? Like if you have a bad loss, you have some disturbing losses in year two, that stuff that people are not going to be able to forgive you for. And we saw it happen with Butch Jones. We've seen it happen with Butch Jones. Where Butch Jones has had some bad losses in his second season as the Vols head coach. And even now, even though Butch Jones has been pretty good, and by the standards of recent Tennessee football success, really good, there's still things that Vols fans will not forgive him for, right? Like they're not going to forgive him for that Florida loss that he took where he looked at the chart and decided, you know what? I'm going to go for a field goal here instead of trying to put more points on the board, at least pick up a first down, at least run out the clock. Like there's so many advantages to what it was that he could have done. Not going to be forgiven for that, right? Just stuff like that ends up being too much, right? Kirby Smart can't afford to have losses like that this upcoming season because it makes it very difficult to support him in the future should things not necessarily break his way. And Georgia, and we know how Georgia fans are, there is no reason for a Georgia fan to expect a national title this year. They expect it. They're that demanding. No reason. They expect it. That's who they are. That's the culture of that fan base. That's the culture of this team, is that winning is always expected, even when logically, come on, Georgia fans. It's not expected. It's not expected. You have a second-year head coach. This is the second year that he's been a head coach ever. It's not expected, but they expect it. And I don't think that he needs to go out there and win it all. I do think that it would help him and his case overwhelmingly if he were to go out there and win the East, which I suspect that he and Georgia will. It would help his case a lot. But he can't afford to have the kinds of losses that Butch Jones had because Tennessee fans were coming from essentially nothing. I think that this is the reason why Butch has been able to last as long as he has lasted, because some of those losses weren't just bad. They were really bad. They were really bad. And it's all about perception in this business. When you look at Jim Harbaugh and his record at Michigan, Michigan fans don't seem to realize this, but Jim Harbaugh's record through 2 seasons at Michigan is almost identical to Brady Hoke's record, and they hate Brady Hoke. A lot of this has to do with perception, that there's a perception that Jim Harbaugh-led Michigan football teams are always in the game, they're always fighting, they're always in consideration for the playoff, they're always seemingly overachieving. It's about perception. So, like, there is no way to escape this. Kirby Smart can't have himself tagged up with any of the kinds of losses that Butch Jones caught himself tagged up with, or it's not going to look well in Georgia. It's not going to look well in Athens. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Yesterday, Independence Day, which means, of course, in New York City, there was the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, and Joey Chestnut wins again, right? Like that's where we are in the world of competitive eating, which is not something I've ever thought that I talk about on this show, except the 4-Letter Network did a wonderful thing. And when I say wonderful, I mean absolutely stupid. They went ahead and put a list of the most dominant dynasties of all time, right? The most championship titles of all time. Bill Russell with 11, Henry Richard with 11 from the NHL. Joey Chestnut's got 10, along with Sam Jones, John Belveau, Ivan Kornoyer, Yogi Berra, and Rafael Nadal all have 10. So Joey Chestnut right there is one of the most dominant athletes of all time. Except competitive eating is can I say that it's not a sport? Is that blasphemous to say that competitive eating is not a sport? And by the way, that does not take away from how difficult it is to do. I'm not saying I could stand up there and eat. How many hot dogs did Joey Chestnut eat yesterday? 72 hot dogs? I'm not saying that I could eat 72 hot dogs in one sitting. In fact, it looks disturbing. I would never do that. I tap out at 3. 3 good-sized hot dogs, and I'm done. And that's if I'm hungry, right? Like if I'm not even that hungry, I might tap out after 2. I don't understand the idea that ESPN has got nothing better to do to cover than to figure out where Joey Chestnut ranks with the all-time great performers of all time when I look at a list of people that I consider to be highly dominant in their sports. Joey Chestnut and Bill Russell don't wind up in the same conversation, right? Joey Chestnut and Yogi Berra don't wind up in the same conversation. And apart from the fact that we're already making a mistake here of comparing apples to apples, competitive eating, even if you were in the camp of people that consider it to be a sport, competitive eating is not a sport in the same way that basketball is a sport, right? You can train to competitively eat. I imagine you'd have to, right? Like not just in terms of like the space that your stomach has to hold any of this junk, but also in terms of how fast you eat. Because I don't know if you watch these guys eat these hot dogs, apart from it being wildly disturbing. Like they are just sucking down the hot dog, essentially. Like they're not really chewing it. And that, I imagine, takes practice. Right? Like that, I imagine, takes a ton of practice. I don't know what all goes into it, right? But you are not an athlete in the same way that Bill Russell, Yogi Berra, and Rafael Nadal are athletes. But ESPN doesn't have anything better to do, so they put it on their graphic, right? I remember one time, and it reminds me, during the college football season, there was a what was the horse's name last year that ended up winning the Triple Crown? It was American Pharoah. They compared Leonard Fournette to American Pharoah in terms of speed, like Leonard Fournette versus a horse. And I'm like, what clownishness is it that they are putting on your TV? And then they want to know why they're losing subscribers and all of that stuff. I mean, what you're putting on TV is nonsense. What you're putting on TV is garbage, right? Like you're getting your butt kicked out of the TV industry in large part because what you're putting on TV is foolishness. I want to see Leonard Fournette versus a horse. How much sense does that make? No, Leonard Fournette is not faster than a horse. He's a human. And Joey Chestnut is not in the same class with Henri Richard, Bill Russell, Sam Jones, Yogi Berra, and Rafael Nadal. Are you kidding me? Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
A cold corpse was discovered in Etowah on the 4th of July. The TBI has been called in to investigate. They say the body belonged to a as-yet unidentified woman, and she'll be sent to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. Current Chattanooga Police Chief Fred Fletcher's tenure at the Chattanooga Police Department seems like it's going to end with a whimper rather than a bang. He's spending his last days on the job with personal leave time. Deputy Chief Roddy is one of the internal applicants, and he's applied to replace Chief Fletcher. He's the one who's in charge right now while Fletcher is on leave. Chief Fletcher officially off the job on Thursday. 3 kayakers, 2 women, 1 man in Polk County got into a bit of trouble on the 4th. Their boats got stuck on an underwater tree, and they were stuck in the middle of the river. Rescue crews had to come out to get them. They're all okay. This was on the Ocoee River. Hamilton County Clerk Bill Knowles announced Tennessee law now allows the issuance of In God We Trust license plates. If you pay a little extra, you can get them. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Any showers will gradually diminish through your nighttime. Still some leftover clouds and mugginess out there. Lows by morning 70 to 72. Now for your Thursday, another very warm, humid day, but scattered afternoon showers and storms will pop back up. Highs upper 80s, a little drier later Friday. Looking for a fast, easy, flexible way to earn extra money? Get your side hustle on. Drive with Uber to earn extra cash when you want on your schedule. Sign up today at uber.com/drive now. And I'm Smart Machine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Ford on Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
I have the best steak selection in town. Name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM, Clutch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio. And quarterbacks in the NFL are horribly underpaid. But really, everybody's horribly underpaid in professional sports that plays in a salary capped league because players don't end up making necessarily what they're worth, right? They are forced to stop at a ceiling, right? Like there's a maximum amount that they can be offered because teams can't use their entire salary cap on one guy. And if you want to be successful in a salary capped sport, you better not use most of your salary cap on one guy. Otherwise, you wind up with all sorts of problems, like not being a championship contender at all, ever. Because even if you had, say, a Michael Jordan caliber players, like say you literally have just Michael Jordan stepping out of a time machine and you decided to offer Michael Jordan most of your cap. You're not winning a title without some kind of other star to help Michael out, because that's what real Michael Jordan had. Right? There is no free market in the NBA because of the salary cap, that there's an artificial ceiling that says, hey, you cannot spend more than this. Otherwise, you have to pay even more money. Right? And that revenue gets shared amongst the teams. So they've kind of socialized it a little bit. The problem is that it starts to hurt teams in that way. And you see it in the NFL too. Teams that cannot afford to pay their quarterback most of their salary cap because they need to surround that quarterback with weapons are forced to pay a quarterback most of their salary cap and then are unable to surround that quarterback with weapons. But if they don't re-sign him, right, then they wind up with no quarterback and just useless weapons. This is the problem that the Redskins are having, right, with Kirk Cousins, that they're going to probably have to, now that they franchise tagged him twice, they're probably going to have to sign Kirk Cousins to something borderlining a $25, $27 million deal, and then figure out how to work the pieces around him. And look, I mean, they've already lost to Deshaun Jackson in anticipation of not being able to sign him back and Kirk Cousins at the same time. Right? And then if Cousins doesn't live up to the contract, well, then everyone's going to ballyhoo about how, oh, look, it's an incompetent organization again. But that's the situation that they're forced into, because they're really not trying to not pay Kirk because they don't think Kirk is worth the money. I'm sure they think he's worth the money. They just don't think he's worth the cap hit. Right? So you wind up making two kinds of economic decisions instead of one. It's not about whether or not I think the guy is worth the money. It's about whether or not I think the guy is worth the cap hit. And then players wind up making two kinds of economic decisions as well, because now they were like, look, if I get all the money that I can get, I might not be able to win. Right? So remove the salary cap. And you see what begins to happen, especially as I look around NBA free agency and I see guys moving all over the place. If teams were able to pay players what they were worth to them, maybe Gordon Hayward's still in Utah. Maybe Kevin Durant is still in Oklahoma City. Like, the reason why Oklahoma City moved James Harden, moved a lot of the pieces that they did, was because their owner does not want to spend over the salary cap, right? Like, refuses to go over the salary cap because he doesn't want to pay that luxury tax, which does get more expensive every year that you are over it. And, you know, Dan Gilbert is out here bleating, but it's fine because he owns Quicken Loans. And they're definitely over the salary cap for like the third straight season. Like, they're not even close to being able to get back under it. But if you take a team like Utah, for instance, Gordon Hayward is looking at all of his other options, and he decides he's going to bolt for Boston because he's got a good chance of winning there. They've got the second best coach in the league in my summation. They've got a talented roster there as well. They play in a weaker conference. I think that is a really good decision for Gordon Hayward. Utah Jazz fans don't think so, right? Jerseys being burned. You've got sports writers saying that, you know, guys want the team to do everything for them, and then when everything happens, they still leave. I was like, yeah, because of the economics of the thing. Like, why would I stay in Utah? Why would I stay in Salt Lake City when I could go to Boston? To a team that has a better chance of winning, right? Like, the West is loaded. And I can go to a city. It's bigger. It's brighter. The coach is better. And I'm not saying anything about Quinn Snyder, by the way, who is a good coach. But Brad Stevens is the second best coach in the league. If you got a chance to play for that guy, you go play for that guy. And plus, Gordon Hayward already played for him in college, so there's a connection there. Like, this is an obvious choice, right? I feel like we all expected Gordon Hayward to go to Boston. But if Utah were able to offer Gordon Hayward even more money, to offer him that money without fear of the salary cap, right? Just say, hey, look, I know all these teams are trying to get you. We're going to offer you an absurd amount of money to stay here. He might have stayed, right? If there was no salary cap, maybe the Oklahoma City Thunder still feature Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. Maybe. That owner's cheap. It's hard to tell. And then teams wouldn't have to make two kinds of economic decisions. Teams wouldn't have to worry about their cap hit. Teams don't have to worry that the max offer that I can offer a guy is not that much more than what he can make somewhere else and make back in shoe deals and make back in advertisements. For goodness sakes, Steph Curry is the new Peyton Manning. He's in Brita water filter ads and Under Armour commercials and Gatorade commercials. I mean, he's in everything. Why? Because Steph Curry's not making the max. He didn't get the max. He deserves to be paid more money than what he's being paid, but it's fine because he can make it back up in endorsements. You can't offer that if you're Utah. Right? The bigger platform, the bigger market, the bigger stage. You can't offer that. And I think that this is where the salary cap is hurting these teams, and it's crazy because the collective bargaining agreement is designed to protect teams like Utah, right? To protect the small market, Oklahoma City, Utah, San Antonio, Milwaukee, right? That's what this is supposed to be designed for. You get these guys short contracts. You get the team to be able to offer a first contract that's restricted. You get the team to be able to offer more money than any other team. It's to be able to bring guys back that you drafted. And instead, what we wind up with is the little teams are actually getting worked over. The smaller teams are actually getting stomped on because they don't have a whole lot of bargaining power outside of the money. If a guy treasures something more than the money, the team cannot pay more money to offset what that guy wants. To say, hey, let's get you $300 million then. And it might be a bad contract, but then that team would be forced to deal with the bad contract. Like we've seen it happen before. Baseball doesn't have a salary cap. Albert Pujols got paid way too much money by the Angels, right? The Cardinals let Albert Pujols walk. And the Angels paid Albert Pujols way too much money. And the Angels are stuck with Albert Pujols and his awful, awful contract, right? As Albert Pujols just continues to decline as a player as he gets older. They are stuck with whatever that is. We've seen it. Alex Rodriguez and the Yankees. We talk about the Yankees buying players, but the Yankees bought a bunch of bad contracts. And the reason why the Yankees are just now becoming to be a good baseball team again is they bought so many guys that were over the hill with contracts that they couldn't get out of that it was an equalizing force for baseball, right? Like if you're good, if you sign good contracts, you can win in baseball, right? It's not always about who's got the big name, who's going to be signing Bryce Harper. If Bryce Harper left the Nationals would be okay, right? They're better with Harper, but they're not dead without him, right? Because you've got to sign good contracts. The Mets had Daniel Murphy. They didn't take a risk on Daniel Murphy. Daniel Murphy goes to the Nationals. He's having an amazing run with them. That was a great signing. But then teams get to worry about the one thing that they need to be worrying about. How much money am I willing to spend on this guy? And I don't have to worry about what percentage of the cap he's going to take and all of this other stuff. And do I need to try and get a mid-level exemption player or a guy on a contract that's veteran minimum? Like you don't have to worry about all of that stuff in baseball. If you sign a bad contract, you're stuck with it and you live with it. You eat the entire contract. And that's just the way that it is. And no one's going to want to trade for that player because no one's going to want to pay that guy way too much money to stink with them. So if Utah wanted the opportunity to sign Gordon Hayward to way more money than Gordon Hayward's worth, it would make sense. Because now you have fans that are upset because they're like, look, we offered you the maximum amount of money that we could offer you, and you still chose to walk away. And they're burning Gordon Hayward's jerseys in the streets, which is, I just think, asinine and stupid. Like, okay, like really Gordon Hayward offended you on a personal level like that? Did he really now? He really did? Did Gordon Hayward come and say something to you about your family? No, what? He chose to play basketball somewhere else? Ooh, the humanity. Oh, the humanity. Right? Which gets to my other thing, which is that fans like really just step off it, guys. Step off it. The NBA is telling players where they're going to play. You come out of college. It's not like he chose to go to Utah. He came out of college. Utah drafts Gordon Hayward. And then when he becomes a free agent, he's a restricted free agent, which means even if he chose to play somewhere else, Utah matches the offer and he stays right in Utah, which is what happened. So there's two instances of a player not being able to control their own destiny. The moment he's able to control his own destiny, he can go wherever he wants. And that's not a personal offense to you, you selfish clown. Really? You're going to be burning some guy's jersey in the streets? And this is silly to me because he's Gordon Hayward. Like, I like Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward's a really good player. Gordon Hayward's not like LeBron, right? Like, Gordon Hayward's not Kevin Durant. He's Gordon Hayward. Like, I didn't know that Gordon Hayward had so much swing in Utah that people became upset enough to burn his jersey in the streets. I was not aware that Gordon Hayward had that level of pull in that state. Like, I understand if you're a Jazz fan why you're not happy, but don't blame Gordon Hayward for this. Blame the league. It's the league that said, here is the maximum amount of money you are allowed to offer a guy. Here's the maximum amount of money you are allowed to spend when you build a basketball team. And you're not allowed to go over this amount. Otherwise, we charge you even more money. That's it. It's not Gordon's fault. If there was a number that Utah could have spent to keep Gordon Hayward in Utah, right? I promise you they would have hit it. This is the best team they've had in years. If there was a number that they could have hit to keep him there, they would have hit it. And I'm pretty sure Boston wouldn't have. Because Gordon Hayward is worth more in dollars to Utah than he is to Boston. But the team that has less money is able to like, literally, the team that has less money to spend on the guy is able to acquire the guy because of benefits beyond money that a team like Utah cannot offset financially. And that's pretty crazy. Right? And that is a big and fundamental problem with the design of the NBA and the design of these salary cap sports, that you end up with players like Tom Brady is criminally underpaid. Granted, it's by choice. He chooses to take less money. He chooses to give the Patriots that hometown discount. But Peyton Manning, when he went to Denver, took less money to go to Denver and then had the single greatest Peyton Manning season of all time. And he's Peyton Manning, a man with many great Peyton Manning seasons. Right? Like the guys take way less than they should. So then you have some quarterbacks that wind up being overpaid because teams are desperate for that position on the market. And then there are teams that are underpaying their quarterback because their quarterback values winning more than money. When really the problem is that we just have a salary cap. And we shouldn't have salary caps in sports. We don't need it. Because if you think that the big teams are always gonna win, the teams that are richest are always going to win, that's not necessarily true. Right? Because then that owner has an amount of money that they are willing to spend on any given player, and teams that are willing to spend more money are more likely to find themselves caught in bad contracts. And if you're caught in bad contracts, that's where the punishment for paying too much for a guy should be. That's where it ought to go. We don't have to be ridiculous, right? What you'll end up finding is that guys will be paid closer to their market value. So while you'll end up paying more for guys like Tom Brady, guys that aren't as good as Tom Brady won't find themselves in the same ballpark with him, right? Guys who look like they might be overpaid will be paid closer to what it is that they are actually worth. Imagine that. Imagine a world where that's a thing. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. It's just the most bothersome thing that I think I've ever seen. LeVar Ball and Joel Embiid, they continue to fight. And it's the silliest argument of all time. I'm not going to spend hardly any time on this. But basically, Lonzo Ball got drafted by the Lakers, and then Joel Embiid said some things on Twitter about, dunking on Lonzo and making his daddy run over to him. And then LeVar took to social media to say about Joel Embiid. Was it a social media? No, I think he just said in a video, in an interview, when you don't win and don't even make the playoffs and don't even stay on the court long enough, that's the best thing you can do, is tweet and make up some stuff. Ain't nobody else doing that because they're working on their games in the gym. These guys ain't played a game, always hurt, and at the bottom of the totem pole. So guess what? Get your behinds off the damn Twitter and get in the gym, which, okay, first off, he sounds like an old man there, that last sentence. But also, this is coming from a man who never played in the NBA, right? Like, if you're going to go at a guy who's been injured and say, well, he's been injured, so of course he's going to tweet stuff. He doesn't have anything better to do but to tweet stuff. What does that say about you, a man who only talks and is all bluster with no substance? What does that say about you? Right? A guy who never played in the league, a guy who in college averaged an entire 2 points a game. What does that say about you? Right? Like that says volumes about your own game. You don't have anything to offer, so you're just talking. You're just talking. So, like, this is the silliest thing to me. Like, and I get it. And then, of course, Joel Embiid goes back with an Instagram post, and the sentiment was blank LeVar Ball, which I understand that sentiment, right? Because, like, here's a guy that is just constantly commenting on things for which he should not be commenting on, clearly, and has no problem doing it whatsoever. He has no problem doing it whatsoever. So there's that. That's all the time I'm going to dedicate to that story. And the last bit of NBA news, Nick Young has become a Golden State Warrior. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I have a personal detestment of Nick Young. But, like, Nick Young is a Golden State Warrior. So to be clear, the Golden State Warriors managed to replace Ian Clark with Nick Young, which is ostensibly an upgrade. And that's pretty crazy, right? Like, it sounds like the rich getting richer a little bit. But this is what happens when you win, right? Then you begin to have a value outside of money. People will take less money than they could take to play with you and get a ring. That is a value outside of money, which goes back to my point about the salary cap. That some teams aren't close to getting a ring, and they might want a player to start to get them to that point. And if you didn't have a salary cap, a team might be able to lure a guy away from just joining a championship team with enough money, right? Like, enough money to offset that desire to win. Like, okay, you might want a ring, but what if I paid you 2 times as much as they were going to pay you? What if I paid you 3 times as much? Right? Like, that's what it's for. I don't know. I just don't think the salary cap is particularly as helpful as we think that it is. And it's supposed to help the teams that don't have as much money, but I think ultimately it winds up hurting them. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. EJ Pelton Company, 332-3339.
This is Thomas DeMoss with Keller Williams Realty. I am a realtor in Chattanooga. We list and sell homes, work with buyers, work with home sellers. I have been involved in real estate for over 10 years. My background is as a real estate investor. That is what I bring to the table, is that real estate investor mindset. My job is to help you sell your house for the most money, employing the best marketing strategy and walking you through what can be a rather stressful process. So we are encouraging people who are on the fence or even thought about selling their house to give us a call. There's no obligation. We're just here to kind of have a conversation, let people know what the process is like, what the market is like, what values they can expect to receive. We work with buyers as well. I also have a buyer's agent that works exclusively with my buyers because we want to give our clients as much attention as we can. My cell phone number is 423-364-0028. Our website is northriverpropertygroup.com. That's northriverpropertygroup.com. We'd love for you guys to call us.
I've been a customer at SNS 14 years. It's way out of my way, but I'm well treated. I believe what I'm told. Price is reasonable. David Tulis here. Make an SNS appointment today. This week, get $50 off any 30,000-mile service or timing belt repair. And get a free combat knife as a gift. SNS Auto Repair specializes in Toyota, Lexus, Honda, Acura, Scion, Nissan, and Infiniti. 6-time winner of Best of the Best Award in the Times 3 Press. 855-3436. ssautorepair.net. 855-3436.
And now to our reporter in the field.
We asked Ray at Ray's Plumbing what's important for homeowners to know.
Some field line systems can cost upwards of $10,000. The bottom line is to save yourself money down the road. I would definitely recommend everybody with a septic that is not on county or city sewer to have an inspection done by a qualified professional. It'd be great if nobody did inspections on them for all plumbing companies. That's what we do to make a living. Not to scare anyone, but it should be in the back of your mind. The danger is the field lines failing and costing thousands upon thousands of dollars and tearing your yard up. By preventative maintenance, you're saving yourself a large headache that may displace yourself and your family. That happens more often than you think. The waste is designed to stay in the tank, and that waste will build up over time. Even with treatment, we have to help that waste break down. Ultimately, preventative maintenance is the key that will keep you from spending $5,000 to $10,000 on replacing your septic system. The bottom line is to save yourself money down the road.
Call Ray at Ray's Plumbing, 421-6341, 421-6341.
Are you looking for a gospel-oriented, covenantal, family-friendly Reformed church? Dayton Reformed Presbyterian Church is a body of Christ-centered believers gathering for worship on the Lord's Day from around southeastern Tennessee. Our congregation is reformational in its outlook. It has a traditional worship service regulated by the Word of God. Prayer, singing the Psalms, reading God's holy Word, teaching, preaching the Bible, the administration of the sacrament. Dayton Reformed Pres, committed to the authority of the Bible as the inerrant, infallible Word of God. As Westminster Confession of Faith directs every Christian, we aim to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. As a Reformed church, our purpose is teaching and preaching the gospel, making and training disciples of Jesus Christ, taking dominion for our Lord's sake by applying God's holy and perfect law to every area of life. We would be honored to have you join us for worship. Dayton Reformed Presbyterian. This Sunday morning at 11 at Dayton Community Chapel, 184 Mulberry Avenue, Dayton. Click DaytonRPC.org. Click DaytonRPC.org. 184 Mulberry Avenue, Dayton.
My name is Trevor Ashley. I'm an attorney here with the law firm McCoon, Williams, Ashley, and Stanley. We have a show on Nooga Radio called Legal Bites, where we discuss legal topics of interest to our listeners: estate planning, business formation, and business transactions. Legal Bites, 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree? Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
It is Eric Jones hard into the outside wall, and they are still 3 and 4 wide. It looks like we're racing at Talladega.
Caution flag is out. It looked like Denny Hamlin was trying to get by Ricky Stenhouse. Got into the back of Ricky at the line. Man, that's a close one. Matt Kenseth wins stage 1.
Green checkered flag is out, and Brad Keselowski has won stage 2.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. into the wall. That will bring out the caution. Caution waving once again. And again, it's Dale Earnhardt Jr. involved.
Oh, trouble. Ty Dillon has gotten turned to the inside of the racetrack, and Clint Boyer has just nailed him.
Matt Kenseth falling back, the field storming by.
Something wrong. Now we see sparks from Gibbs's Toyota. Larson chucks him off. Coming off turn number 2. Goes to tail. Now it's Logano to the high side in 3.
Joey Logano, a winner here at the Richmond International Raceway.
Hear it live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM.
The voice of NASCAR.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
A cold corpse was discovered in Etowah on the 4th of July. The TBI has been called in to investigate. They say the body belonged to a as yet unidentified woman, and she'll be sent to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. Current Chattanooga Police Chief Fred Fletcher's tenure at the Chattanooga Police Department seems like it's going to end with a whimper rather than a bang. He's spending his last days on the job with personal leave time. Deputy Chief Roddy is one of the internal applicants, and he's applied to replace Chief Fletcher. He's the one who's in charge right now while Fletcher is on leave. Chief Fletcher officially off the job on Thursday. 3 kayakers, 2 women, 1 man in Polk County got into a bit of trouble on the 4th. Their boats got stuck on an underwater tree, and they were stuck in the middle of the river. Rescue crews had to come out to get them. They're all okay. This was on the Ocoee River. Hamilton County
WBLZ HD4 Ottawa, W224AZ Chattanooga, WSDT Sunny Daisy Chattanooga.
A call for new sanctions after North Korea's latest missile test.
Yesterday's actions made the world a more dangerous place.
President Trump gets a warm welcome in Poland, but things could turn frosty in Germany.
President Trump faces some high-stakes diplomacy.
This is the CBS World News Roundup Late Edition. I'm Pam Coulter. Rallying the world to confront the threat of North Korea.
Make no mistake, North Korea's launch of an ICBM is a clear and sharp military escalation.
UN Ambassador Nikki Haley addressed an emergency session of the Security Council a day after North Korea's launch of a missile capable of hitting Alaska. She said the action requires new punishment.
If you see this as a threat, if you see this for what it is, which is North Korea showing its muscle, then you need to stand strong and vote with the international community to strengthen sanctions on North Korea.
China's ambassador, speaking through an interpreter, offered condemnation of the launch, but no support for new sanctions.
China finds this launching unacceptable. We strongly urge the DPRK to strictly abide by the resolutions of the Security Council.
The Heritage Foundation's Bruce Klingner says Beijing could do more.
We're hoping that China would allow a reduction in the amount of coal that North Korea would be allowed to export. And we're also hoping that China will allow the cessation of North Korea's overseas workers, which are bringing currency into the North Korean regime.
President Trump arrived in Poland a short time ago. CBS's Stephen Portnoy in Warsaw.
North Korea will be a major focus of President Trump's meetings here in Europe this week. After meeting with the Polish president and giving a speech to Poles, Mr. Trump heads to Hamburg, Germany, and the G20 summit. He'll hold one-on-one meetings with nearly a dozen counterparts, including Russian President Vladimir Putin. It'll be their first face-to-face encounter.
On the president's first trip to Europe in May, he chided NATO allies over their military spending and failed to reiterate U.S. support for the principle of collective defense. Since then, he pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. More than 1 million Jews and others were killed at the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland, and that's why Republican Congressman Clay Higgins' video recorded inside the gas chamber has triggered outrage.
This is why Homeland Security must be squared away, why our military must be invincible.
Ephraim Zuroff of the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Israel.
It's not really appropriate in a gas chamber in Birkenau, and that's unfortunate, but I certainly don't attribute to him any bad intentions.
The Louisiana congressman has apologized for the unintended pain caused by the video and has taken it off his Facebook page. On Wall Street, the Dow was down 1 point today. Now this.
With Quicken Loans, the outdated and complicated mortgage process is a thing of the past. Our simple process helps you understand all the details so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage. Take your mortgage to the next level and call 800-QUICKEN or go completely online with Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. No matter how you prefer to work with us, we've got what you need to get you through the mortgage process with ease. For 7 years in a row now, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. And for the third year in a row, they also ranked us highest in the nation for mortgage servicing. Whether you're looking to purchase or refinance, now is the time. The rate today on a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.875%, APR 4.23%. Call 800-QUICKEN or get started online at rocketmortgage.com. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
It was a violent 4th of July in Chicago. There was an average of 20 shootings a day over the long holiday weekend, and 14 people were killed. Police spokesman Kevin Navarro.
Our problem in Chicago is gangs and guns. And whereas LA, it's spread out, people are on top of each other and the gangs are on top of each other. So that's the major difference.
The eruption of violence came even as police put more than 1,300 extra officers on the street for the holiday. And a string of killings in Baltimore over the holiday weekend hit close to home for the city police spokesman. CBS's Steve Dorsey reports.
I don't mind delivering the news, but I hate being the news.
Baltimore police spokesman TJ Smith is now in the spotlight for a different reason, speaking out about his 24-year-old brother Dion shot dead over the long holiday weekend. Smith's brother was the 173rd homicide victim in Baltimore this year.
Traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240. Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
A cold corpse was discovered in Etowah on the 4th of July. The TBI has been called in to investigate. They say the body belonged to a as-yet unidentified woman, and she'll be sent to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. Current Chattanooga Police Chief Fred Fletcher's tenure at the Chattanooga Police Department seems like it's going to end with a whimper rather than a bang. He's spending his last days on the job with personal leave time. Deputy Chief Roddy is one of the internal applicants, and he's applied to replace Chief Fletcher. He's the one who's in charge right now while Fletcher is on leave. Chief Fletcher officially off the job on Thursday. 3 kayakers, 2 women, 1 man in Polk County got into a bit of trouble on the 4th. Their boats got stuck on an underwater tree, and they were stuck in the middle of the river. Rescue crews had to come out to get them. They're all okay. This was on the Ocoee River. Hamilton County Clerk Bill Knowles announced Tennessee law now allows the issuance of In God We Trust license plates. You pay a little extra, you can get them. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Any showers will gradually diminish through your nighttime. Still some leftover clouds and mugginess out there. Lows by morning 70 to 72. Now for your Thursday, another very warm, humid day, but scattered afternoon showers and storms will pop back up. Highs upper 80s, a little drier later Friday. Looking for a fast, easy, flexible way to earn extra money? Get your side hustle on. Drive with Uber to earn extra cash when you want on your schedule. Sign up today at uber.com/drive now. And I'm Smorgine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core on Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
He stole out so much cash, such a huge mountain of cash, that he's become a national star. Rick Davis. You know the story. Cash, 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 and more cash. People can't believe it. They want to see it. And now Rick Davis has a new TV show. National TV, USA and Canada. He's got the gold and silver, diamonds and rings. You get dizzy just thinking about it. Rick's selling. Rick's buying. Cash, 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 and more cash. And now a mountain of cash catching the Hollywood spotlight. You know where it is. Brainerd Road. Rick Davis, Gold and Diamonds. Cash, 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 and national TV cash. That's really big. Everyone wants to see it. Money flying out the door. Rick Davis is America's jeweler. It's better than Hollywood. It's right here. Cash, 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 and more cash. Rick Davis, Gold and Diamonds. Brainerd Road.
You love me. You really love me.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose here on Nooga Radio. Our phone number is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. And I cannot even believe that Butch Jones is as delusional a guy as he is. And I say that because I think the frustration with Butch Jones comes with the fact that he comes off very frequently as delusional. Because most coaches with Butch Jones' record, I don't think that there's a level of ire. I don't think there's a level of anger that a coach with his accomplishments should be drawing. Right. He's got an 80-48 record as head coach of Tennessee. That shouldn't draw really any anger, but it does. Right. He's one of the top 10 head coaches in the last few years of Power 5 coaches. Right. That if you haven't won a national title, among those coaches, he's got the most wins, right? So, like, not counting Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney over the last couple of years, of the next 10 guys, Butch Jones has one of the highest victory totals in the last 2 years. Well, that shouldn't make anybody angry. Why does Butch Jones make us so blanking mad? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why. Because Butch Jones promises things that he cannot deliver, right? Either that or he's delusional. And he believes that he is accomplishing things that he's in fact not accomplishing. For instance, Butch Jones has said many times that he believes that Tennessee has been contending for championships. Now, I don't know if Butch Jones is watching the same games that we are all watching, but Tennessee has not been contending for championships. They've been improving every season. They've gotten a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. They've gotten solid recruiting classes, a lot of good talent to look forward to. But if you're talking about a team that is contending for championships, we're not talking about the same team, right? Last year, Tennessee could have contended for an SEC championship. They could have contended for a division title, but they didn't because they lost to South Carolina and Vanderbilt. So you're not contending for a championship then. Those are just empty words. And I think that is the problem with Butch Jones, is that he is very easy and able to give empty words. The champions of life thing, I thought was overdone and over the top. I don't think it was that funny to me. But also, I do think that he did deserve to be mocked for saying that, because what that does is miss the point, which is that Tennessee fans want to compete in games that matter. And you blew that off. That it wasn't a big deal that this team did not compete in a game that mattered when they could have, when they controlled their own destiny, when they were in the driver's seat of the division, should have won the SEC East. Should have won it. And look, I'm not saying they would have ever had a chance to beat Alabama, but of all the teams in the last 2 years, the Tennessee football team in 2015, I thought was the closest that anybody was beaten to Alabama since Alabama actually lost to Clemson. Right? Because I think that in order to beat Alabama, you need a quarterback that's going to throw for like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Josh Dobbs, not that quarterback, and they still almost won, which means that they almost out-Alabama'd Alabama. It almost happened. If there was a school that had a puncher's chance, Tennessee might have been that school, and I'm not saying that they would have done it. But what I'm saying is the chance never came up. We never got the opportunity, and we've got Butch Jones being absolutely delusional or flat out lying to us, telling us that somehow Tennessee is competing and contending for championships. Yeah, what championships? Right? Because nobody wants to be the champions of life. That's like being called the most beautiful young man by your mom. She's your mom. Your mom always thinks you're handsome. Right? Like your mom and your grandma think you're the most handsome young man on earth. Right? So far as your mom and your grandma are concerned, you're Ryan Gosling. You're George Clooney. And whether or not that's actually true. I don't want mom compliments from the head coach of the football team. Like from the head coach of the football team, there's a certain level of realism that you want. And say whatever it is that you want to say about Brett Bielema. But part of Brett Bielema's pretty impressive run at Arkansas is that Brett Bielema never promised Arkansas fans anything that he could not deliver. Brett Bielema is not out here telling Razorback fans that they're contending for titles when they're in the SEC West with Alabama. Right? Now, I think Arkansas fans are upset a little bit, and they're mad because they feel like their team is talented enough and has been talented enough to certainly win more games than they have won. And I completely agree. But Brett Bielema is not promising those people the same thing that Butch Jones is out here promising Vols fans. Which if you're going to promise championship contention, then you better deliver on that promise. And don't back out of it later, right? Don't try and Houdini your way out of a statement you yourself made. Don't try and fire up the hype engine, and then when it backfires, try and run. The people don't like that. Fans don't like that. Vols fans specifically do not like that. And it's hard. It's hard to like Butch Jones in that light because while he has done a lot for this football team in terms of rebuilding it, and the rebuilding is a process that takes time and does not happen overnight, which we all understand, don't promise more than you can deliver, right? Don't write a check with your mouth that you can't cash. And Butch Jones has done that over and over again. And last year, the year where he probably should have been promising more, he didn't. He tried to hide from the pressure of the expectations, even though last year's team was his best team. Last year's team was the team that should have been SEC East champs. And you had 2 games you needed to win against beatable competition that you were better than. Because, I mean, they're better than South Carolina. I don't care how many injuries that Tennessee team had. That was a team that was not as good as the Vols were. And they lost a game to Vandy. That doesn't make any sense. Because, again, that's not a team that's as good as the Vols were. And one has to question, one has to ask the legitimate question, can the Vols be a great football team under Butch Jones? Because that is something that great football teams do. That is something that merely good football teams do. Great football teams really just beat anybody. They beat anybody anywhere. Good football teams, at the very least, beat the teams they're supposed to beat. And under Butch Jones, there have been way too many instances of Tennessee underachieving, of Tennessee not beating the teams on their schedule that they're supposed to beat, or else struggling against teams on their schedule that they're not supposed to be struggling against. You're not supposed to be struggling against Appalachian State. You're not supposed to be struggling against Missouri. You're not supposed to be losing to Vanderbilt. You're not supposed to be losing to South Carolina on a season where, you know what, it's Will Muschamp. It's his first season there. He hasn't brought in all his people yet. Like, this school was not prepared to beat Tennessee just yet. How are they beating you? How are they beating you with a freshman quarterback? People are tired of that. Like, when you ask the question of, like, okay, Butch Jones, how should we proceed with him? Because if you fire Butch Jones before the end of his contract, you'll owe him $7.5 million. I don't think anybody wants to just pay a guy if they don't have to. And the thing with Butch, like I said, very conservative, makes the easy decision, takes the easy way out, doesn't take a whole lot of risks. So with that said, he hasn't made any of the very foul decisions. Like, he hasn't had very many foul losses. He hasn't had any situations where he started with a quarterback. His quarterback was maybe fine, but not great. And then he switched to a different quarterback who played worse, right? Like that. We've had that. We've had the Gus Malzahn, let's play the quarterback carousel with all the quarterbacks on my own team kind of deal. SEC Media Days, the 2017 schedule has been announced. Butch Jones, July 10th, next Monday. And I'm looking forward to hearing what it is that he has to say about this upcoming season, because I don't think that this team is as good as last year's team, but I think that the expectations are around just as high, right? Like, if you're not going to win the division and somehow come away winning 9 games last year, then you better win around 8 or 9 again, right? Like, I don't think this is the year that people are expecting Tennessee to win the division. And I know that Vegas has Tennessee at 7.5 games, right? Like the over-under 7.5. I think if Butch does not hit the over on this schedule, I think there are going to be people calling for him, right? I think there are going to be people calling for him to be fired. If he hits 7, people might accept it, maybe. But anything lower than that would be ridiculous. And when I look at Tennessee's schedule, they could easily win 8 games. But that doesn't mean anything. This is our problem, right? That doesn't mean anything. When I look at the schedule, they ought to win 8. Doesn't mean they will. Doesn't mean they will. And I think in large part because of the man who is coaching them. Doesn't mean they will. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Another thing that I find very interesting, because I want to hear from Gus Malzahn. He's on Thursday, July 13th. One of the last 3 coaches to go. And again, the schedule is subject to change. But Auburn, Gus Malzahn, Thursday. Gus Malzahn, to me, I have one question. Is Jarrett Stidham going to be the starter of your football team? Because right now, Gus Malzahn is pretending, and he is pretending, that somehow Sean White is fighting for this job, and that, it's an equal opportunity. Sean White might be able to win this job, even though you and I both know Sean White is not about to win this job. And unless Gus Malzahn wants to be fired way earlier than we ever imagined in a season where his job could actually be saved, he better not start Sean White. We've already seen what Sean White can do. It ain't that impressive. It ain't great. Let's just go ahead and start Jarrett Stidham. Let's go ahead and stop pretending, right? We talk about quarterback controversies, and this is the summertime. We are a mere handful of days away now, it feels like, from the beginning of the college football season. A mere handful of days away. And I am like, look, this is the height of talking season. And I am one of those people that I don't think quarterback controversies are that interesting to talk about, right? Because you don't have any hypothetical to really move forward with a quarterback controversy. It's like, oh, either the team's going to start this guy or this guy. Cool. Here's where the quarterback controversy becomes interesting. When it gets settled. When we know who the starter is going to be, and then we can speculate on how well they are going to do or whether or not they should have gone with the other guy. We cannot really have that conversation when it's like, yeah, it's between Jalen Hurts and Tua. Like, what kind of conversation are we having then? There's nothing to move forward with. There's nothing to press on. Like that's the end of the conversation. It's okay that it's an either or between these two guys. I'm not hugely fond of quarterback controversies. When a starter has a job, that gives me something to talk about. This Sean White, Jarrett Stidham thing is silly because we all know who the starter is, right? Like we all know at this juncture who the best quarterback on that roster is, and it's not Sean White. Right? Like Jarrett Stidham has shown an impressive ability already in the few games that he played at Baylor. I really do not understand exactly what it is that Gus Malzahn gets out of pretending that his starter is not the guy that we all know is going to be the starter. He doesn't get a competitive advantage out of it. He's not fooling anybody in the SEC. He's not fooling any of these other coaches. So he doesn't get it. He doesn't get that out of it. Right? Does he want the media to not really talk about anything very much? Because he's not fooling anybody in the media. Does he not want to get the fans' hopes up? Well, he's not fooling any of the fans. Who on earth is Gus Malzahn fooling? We know it's Jarrett Stidham. We know he's the best quarterback on your roster because we have eyes and we can see him. Right? Like this only holds you back. The longer you wait before making a decision that is obvious to everyone, the more you hold back, at the very least, Jarrett Stidham, right? Like, just get him most of the reps, get him most of the attention already. Because I guarantee you teams are already game planning for him. Like, you're not changing anybody's game plan. It just doesn't follow for me. It doesn't make any sense. Hugh Freeze is also going to be interesting. Right? Brett Bielema was always interesting. Ed Orgeron, I imagine, is always going to be interesting. He's going to be one of our always interesting coaches from now on. Pretty interested in Kirby Smart. Nick Saban coming off the championship loss. That ought to be interesting. Kevin Sumlin, job on the hot seat. That ought to be interesting. And Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze to me is incredibly interesting because he's not playing for anything. And watching Hugh Freeze pretend like this season means anything to him at all is going to be great. It's going to be great because Hugh Freeze is a guy who I think if he was at a number of other schools would have been fired already. And that's without the NCAA sanction stuff. But no, Ole Miss has doubled down on Hugh Freeze. So now they have to stick with him, regardless of how poorly he coaches, which I think will allow him at the very least some kind of excuse, which is that, no, the sanctions held me back and I had to reduce scholarships and all of that stuff. I mean, he's got a built-in excuse for this season. It's not like they were going to a bowl game anyway because they don't have bowl game eligibility. He's the guy with the most built-in excuses, but he's the guy that's also going to have to stand there in all of these press conferences with all of these coaches playing games that matter and pretend like his games matter too. And they do not. And Hugh Freeze has not been, at least to me, in my eyes, particularly great about spinning the fact that these games don't mean anything. Nothing whatsoever. He is just coaching at this particular juncture just to do it. Just they pay him to do it, so he's going to do it. Everybody else is coaching to win. They're coaching for pride. You're coaching for your university to get some bragging rights, to beat rivals. And Hugh Freeze at least has got the rival thing going, but that's about all he's got going. Nothing else that Hugh Freeze does this season matters at all. And part of it could just be like, look, he's got the built-in excuse. He's got a reason to continue hanging around. Ole Miss is going to let him get his recruits back. And then if he's able to recruit properly, then we'll get to see what it is that the real Hugh Freeze is offering us. Even though we've already seen what the real Hugh Freeze is offering us, and I'm not sure that I like it. The real Hugh Freeze has offered us a guy that's at least a fairly talented quarterback in Chad Kelly, giving monster performances, and they couldn't keep a lead. The Chad Kelly gave us a monster performance against Alabama last year, blew the lead. The Chad Kelly gave us a monster performance against Florida State last year, blew the lead. Like, am I really going to hitch my wagon to Hugh Freeze? And this is before the man has proven himself to be a walking NCAA violation. Right? Like, that's without all the NCAA violation stuff. Like, I was very, very, very much under the impression that Hugh Freeze was about to be without a job this coming season. And nothing floors me more than when I look at the SEC Media Days coaching lineup and still see his name on this list. Hugh Freeze has a job, and that's a miracle. Arguably the biggest miracle of the football season, and it hasn't even started yet. Plus with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
A cold corpse was discovered in Etowah on the 4th of July. The TBI has been called in to investigate. They say the body belonged to a as-yet unidentified woman, and she'll be sent to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. Current Chattanooga Police Chief Fred Fletcher's tenure at the Chattanooga Police Department seems like it's going to end with a whimper rather than a bang. He's spending his last days on the job with personal leave time. Deputy Chief Roddy is one of the internal applicants, and he's applied to replace Chief Fletcher. He's the one who's in charge right now while Fletcher is on leave. Chief Fletcher officially off the job on Thursday. 3 kayakers, 2 women, 1 man in Polk County got into a bit of trouble on the 4th. Their boats got stuck on an underwater tree, and they were stuck in the middle of the river. Rescue crews had to come out to get them. They're all okay. This was on the Ocoee River. Hamilton County Clerk Bill Knowles announced Tennessee law now allows the issuance of In God We Trust license plates. If you pay a little extra, you can get them. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News, now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Any showers will gradually diminish through your nighttime. Still some leftover clouds and mugginess out there. Lows by morning 70 to 72. Now for your Thursday, another very warm, humid day, but scattered afternoon showers and storms will pop back up. Highs upper 80s, a little drier later Friday. Looking for a fast, easy, flexible way to earn extra money? Get your side hustle on. Drive with Uber to earn extra cash when you want on your schedule. Sign up today at uber.com/drive now. And I'm Smart Machine 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core on Nooga Radio AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
I have the best steak selection in town. Name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Folks, it is wet out there. It is wet out there. Drive safely. Get home alive. Don't drive recklessly. The roads are slick. I don't have to tell you this. I just felt like doing it because I care. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. So, Tennessee defensive coordinator Bob Shoop is being sued. Being sued by his former university, Penn State. Almost $900,000. Specifically $891,856 per the court records of the state, according to PennLive.com. Bob Shoop owes the university. He owes Penn State over close to $900,000 for breach of contract. And the university does not expect him to pay the money. So they moved forward with the lawsuit. And it's interesting because when Bob Shoop came to Tennessee early last year, he left January of last year to become the defensive coordinator. A clause in his contract stated that if he resigned before his contract expired on February 15, 2018, he had to pay Penn State the liquidated damages of 50% of his base pay for the remainder of his contract. Right? The contract stated that Shoop wouldn't have to pay Penn State University back if he became the head coach at another university within 1 year of the date of his resignation. So over a year later, and Bob Shoop is very much the defensive coordinator at Tennessee and not at all a head coach. Right? So with over 2 years remaining on the contract, when he resigned, he owes $891,856. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of cheddar. And here's the thing. David Hart was the athletic director of the Vols at the time. And one of the reasons why Tennessee, I think, was very excited to have Bob Shoop was that basically he said in the contract negotiations that he was going to leave Tennessee out of buying out his contract. He was not going to ask the University of Tennessee athletic program to buy out his previous contract, which is a thing that happens with coaches all the time, that you leave, which is essentially a breach of contract. You would owe the previous school money, but then the school that you're headed to, the new school that you're going to, will buy out the contract from the previous school, so that you're not necessarily in breach of contract because the new school's got you covered. Right? Except, as you know, the goal of athletic directors is to raise money, or at the very least, to keep the money that you have. So the less money that you spend buying out contracts, the better for you. Right? And also it spoke volumes, is what David Hart said, about how badly Bob Shoop wanted to come to Tennessee. And maybe it did. Maybe it did. But I can't imagine that this is not an overwhelmingly giant distraction, right? That the idea that a university is going to be suing a former coach $900,000, which, you know, is just going to be hard to come up with all in one portion, is kind of crazy. Right? It's fairly alarming. And I don't know if this is going to affect his coaching at all. Probably not, right? Like you'll coach and you'll be away from the riffraff of all of that stuff. But I can't imagine that this is not an overwhelming distraction. And I find it very hard to believe that David Hart didn't think that this was going to become a distraction at some kind. Like, it's not like most people have the $900,000 on hand for this kind of thing anyway. I find it a little bit odd that it has not been addressed up until this particular moment. I know that Penn State could not move forward with this until it had been at least a year, but I still find it overwhelmingly difficult to wrap my mind around a coach breaching his contract, knowing that he's going to owe money for doing so, and not having set up any particular kind of plan to pay the previous school back. That just seems reckless to me. I could be wrong. I'm not in Bob Shoop's life. And he is a very talented defensive coordinator, right? He has not caused the university any particular kind of struggle just yet. just yet. But this is insane, right? And when he was at Penn State was ranked number 2 in the country defensively and then number 14 in the nation defensively. How do you let this happen? And I understand that we live in America, a country where debt just happens to people a lot. Like people are just drowning in credit card debt and all the like. And people in my generation, we are just drowning in college loan debt. But this is different. You signed a contract that if you breached it, if you left, guess what? This is what you owe. And you had a year. You had a year to figure it out. And somehow couldn't do it. Or didn't manage to. And now the school's moving to sue you. And I've read a couple of articles on it. It doesn't seem as though they're in the wrong here. Like it doesn't appear as though they don't have every right to move forward with this. Right? And I understand that there's always going to be complications with these contracts because coaches leave early all the time. And a lot of times it is to become a head coach, and then that is built into the clause because everybody knows you're trying to climb the ladder and stuff. Being a defensive coordinator at a different school outside of the conference, I just think that the school is like, look, we're going to try and recover our lost funds. A lot of this is about making money. A lot of this is about keeping money. I don't know if Tennessee would be apropos to like helping out Bob Shoop and then having him pay them back later. They could withhold some of his salary or something. I don't know. But it just seems like a catastrophic distraction came out of nowhere, and it absolutely did not have to. Right? Like in no sense of this did that actually have to happen. None whatsoever. Fletch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. So considering that I think social media is possibly one of the worst things on this earth, I have to applaud Rory McIlroy. He's giving up Twitter after a recent social media feud, which I just think it's silly, right? That people are paying any attention to what Twitter trolls have to actually say. And not even trolls, just people with opinions that don't mean anything. Right? So Steve Elkington said, Rory is so bored playing golf. Without Tiger, the threshold is probably 4 majors with $100 million in the bank. Right? And Rory basically commented on it and said, more like 200 mil. Not bad for a bored 28-year-old. Plenty more where that came from. And then he quit social media, right? The whole incident left a sour taste in his mouth. And he said, I'm off social media just because of that reason. I don't need to read it. It's stuff that shouldn't get to you. And sometimes it does. And look, it shouldn't, right? Like people's opinions should not matter to you if they don't know you, if they don't understand your situation, where you're coming from, what you're about. Like everybody's opinions should matter. But I think with social media, especially when it comes to these famous athletes, and I don't think that we've ever had a generation grow up being so highly criticized by everyone, where you can see yourself being highly criticized by everyone. This is the first time in like the history of mankind that's been able to happen, where like everybody's opinions about you are floating out there for you to see and hear and read. And it will drive you crazy, right? I am a big comic book nerd, and I will not bore you with my comic book nerddom, but there is a really good comic book called Irredeemable, and it's about this character who's basically in his world like Superman. Like, that's his thing. And he can hear everything that everybody is saying about him all the time, and it drives him crazy. And so instead of being this hero Superman, he becomes this insane homicidal Superman, just going like just berserk, just destroying planet Earth because it drove him up a wall, hearing every negative thing that anybody ever had to say about you. And we're in a position now. Rory McIlroy is 1 year older than me. He is 28 years old. And I don't know if I could deal with that level of scrutiny from like everyone. I don't have the level of scrutiny that Rory has, not anywhere close. People, mess with me on Twitter, and I mess with people back. But I might get one mean tweet every 3 months. Like it's nothing serious. I'm not famous, so I'm cool. But for a guy like him, it's near constant, and it's not just random nobodies, right? Like the people I like to just call the randoms. If you tweet me and I don't know your name and I've never seen your name before, like get out of here. You don't matter. I'm not interested in your opinion. Like I'll hear from you. I'll talk to you. But if you have a personal criticism of me as a human being, as a radio host, like I'm sorry, I just don't have time for your opinion. This is not one of the randoms. Like these are people who a lot of times you grow up and you grow up respecting, right? Like the whole JaVale McGee and Shaq thing that got out of hand. Like Shaq does not see the problem with him making fun of JaVale McGee. And the problem with Shaq making fun of JaVale McGee is that you're the quote-unquote adult in this situation. JaVale McGee is a guy in his 20s, and you are making fun of him. He probably grew up admiring you, looking up to you, and this guy that you are looking up to, like he's not a random, he's somebody that is considered to matter. He's a Hall of Famer, is now coming after you on a level that is personal and insane, right? And I think that is where it drives people up a wall, because Steve Elkington's not a nobody. But where does Steve Elkington get off saying that Rory is bored? Why does that matter? How do you know that? You don't know that. Stop wildly throwing things out there into the ether, but that's how social media works. And you cannot take the time to discuss every little thing with everybody on social media. You will drive yourself bonkers. So yeah, I'm okay with Rory McIlroy quitting social media. And I'll be honest with you, I'm more than just a fan of Rory McIlroy quitting social media. I think everybody should at least limit the social media that they use, because it hurts everybody. Like there isn't anybody that is universally helped by constantly following the actions of all of their friends, especially when you think about social media in the terms of it basically being a place to show a better side of yourself, of showing a good side of yourself, right? It's not you, it's your alter ego. It's the avatar of you. That's what social media is. Social media doesn't show any of your flaws. Why? Because you don't put your flaws on social media. If you take pictures of yourself, you always take your pictures of your good side with your best angle, if you can, right? Whenever you put a quote on social media, it's the smartest quote you can find. Anytime that you put a picture of what you've done on social media, you're doing the coolest stuff. You're eating the best food. You're visiting the nicest places. All social media is just one giant contest where we one-up one another with all of our stuff. And what you end up doing with social media is you end up looking at other people's lives and you're not seeing it realistically. You're not seeing it for what it is. People don't post pictures of their arguments on social media with their relationships because that would be weird. They only post happy good times. That makes sense. I'm not saying don't do that. But what I am saying is then it makes it out to be these people never argue. They have the best life ever. All they do is travel. And that might not be the case. But because of social media, you're programmed. You've been programmed to think that that's how real life works. And it's not at all how real life works. Like we could all stand to use a little less social media. Like get off of Twitter a little bit. I don't read all my tweets every day. I'm not on Twitter every day. I'm on Twitter a couple times a week, but that's it. And I'll have a Twitter session. And those of you who follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @SportsCloud. Those of you who follow me on Twitter know this. I will just erupt with 13 tweets. And then I'm done. You won't see me till next week. Not going to be on Twitter all the time. Don't have time for it. Don't have time to be in a situation where I'm interacting with a world that's not real. And this is the problem. And this is what I think I'm applauding Rory for, is when people are criticizing Rory McIlroy constantly, it's causing him to live in a world that is not real, right? Like, people are not every single day of their lives thinking about Rory McIlroy. I like golf, and even when I'm thinking about golf, I'm not thinking about Rory, right? Like, you can't. But it gives off that impression. It causes you to live in some bizarro world that doesn't make any sense. And there's a number of leading studies, scientific studies, that show just how bad social media can be if you spend too much time on it. And all social media has done is given a bunch of very young people who have not yet learned how to handle their emotions properly an avenue where they can basically be offended 24/7. And it's not just the famous that this happens to. I think the famous are the biggest examples that this happens to. But you can be offended by everything on Twitter if you want to. Like, if you don't like the liberal media, it's funny to me because people will do this. They will be incredibly conservative and follow the liberal media on Twitter just so they can be offended all day. And vice versa. I know people that are incredibly liberal and don't do anything but follow conservative media, right? Like, don't do anything but like follow Fox News, and they know they're going to be offended by Fox News. Like, what are you following them for? Like, just to be offended. We live in a world where if you want to be offended all day, you can be offended all day. Yesterday, Twitter broke itself because National Public Radio, their Twitter profile, began to tweet the Declaration of Independence. And there are parts of the Declaration of Independence that, if you take it out of context, does seem very revolutionary, like trying to start a revolution. And people did not catch the context of it and erupted and thought that NPR was saying it's time to go take out the president, which is not what they were saying at all, except it was a bunch of people following NPR that wanted to be offended by NPR. So they were. If you didn't want to be offended, what are you following them for? Knowing that anything they say will offend you. Anything. Even if they tweet the Declaration of Independence, you will be offended. Now, I think it's weird that they chose to tweet the entire Declaration of Independence, like line by line. Because, yeah, there are some parts of the Declaration of Independence that are fighting words that, without the proper context, don't make any sense to anybody. And you wouldn't recognize the Declaration of Independence. You know, like, people on the left are now making fun of people on the right for not recognizing the Declaration of Independence, like many of us would recognize the Declaration of Independence reading it from the middle. Okay, sure. But still, it's still one of those things where, like, you went to a place to be offended because you wanted to be offended. And I think that that's the position that a lot of people who are famous, a lot of people who have a lot of clout, especially athletes who are in their 20s, right? Rory's 28. Gosh, most of the stars of the Golden State Warriors are in their 20s, mid to late 20s. You just find yourself in this position where you are relying very heavily on something that is not giving you a very proper and clear view of the reality that you are in. And I would just encourage people to get off of social media, at least for a chunk of your week, right? Or if you have something to do, turn off Facebook. Because all it does is show you this mirror of reality, and it's a funhouse mirror. It's not showing you what's real. It's not showing you what's really there. It's showing you this warped version of what's really there. And in the case of somebody like Rory, who didn't do anything wrong and just got criticized because, what, his face is a face that looks like someone who is bored? Because that's the best I got for you. Get off of it. Get off of it. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. It'll make your life better, I promise. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch. I'll see you all in 24 hours. The roads are slick. The roads are wet. Be safe. I like talking to you guys. Alex Jones, next.